in Germany, and week 2 of the LEC spring split. XL Esports has gone from last place to playoff contenders. And today we'll talk more about the evolution of the UK underdogs as we see them exiting their van to enter the studio, including superstar caster Kadril. We'll also preview our match of the week and learn a thing or two about wave management. I'm Sjokz, joined by Yamatocannon and Frosk. Now, as we dip into the standings from yesterday, G2 and Origen continued their winning streaks, solidifying themselves as the top teams in the LEC. Of course, we'll see them facing off a bit later today. But Yamato, out of the two, who have you seen the most complete performances out of so far?
Complete, I would say Origen, because I think their drafts they've just played for the drafts, honestly. Their drafts have been fantastic, but at the same time, these drafts haven't forced them to be tested in the later parts of the game. Usually, they figure out the early game, and then later on, it's like they can just wait, because they outscale. So there's some question marks there still.
Yeah, and it's kind of like the three components that I think Ender really highlighted yesterday about Origen's draft. That's you're bringing range, you're bringing CC, and you're bringing scaling potential. And this kind of is the secret ingredients for what Origen have been able to put together on the Rift, and then use it to great success.
And at the same time, with G2, I think the biggest question mark, what will happen when they face a team that is actually disciplined? They threw some early games early on, and then they came back because they found these flaws in the way that the enemy played. Origen, so far, and their performance has been close to flawless.
Yeah, I like how it's a double-edged sword for both sides, because you could say, oh, for Origen, they're so methodical, but we really also haven't seen them challenge or straight up run up against in that mid game, and perhaps that is something that G2 can do. And I also have an inkling, Froskurinn, that in these games where it really matters and they have to play cleaner, we might see a different G2.
I mean, they certainly turned it on just the other day, so it's always this idea that it's like the beast is sleeping, and you're just waiting for G2 to get angry and to wake up. And we heard from them yesterday that they are ready, that they think they are still definitively the best team, and they're going to prove it today.
We'll see. I also want to put the attention on XL, who's currently in 3rd place and could book their very first undefeated week in their LEC history. It's just been phenomenal to see how they've entered the split.
I think EXO showed a lot of promise even last year because they had some key pieces. Kadril stepping up big time. They didn't reach playoffs, so we didn't celebrate them in the same way as Rogue. But I think they were on a similar trajectory, made massive improvements in the bot lane. And I think that just means that XL is a team to be reckoned with.
Yeah, for me, I mean, we'll always talk about Kadril and how he is kind of that superstar caster and jungler right there in the bot lane. But I think Yamato did bring it up very well, is that it is that bot lane. It's the fact that you have Patrick and Torre down there that have really been the difference maker for me. And then all you need is for Mickey to come up heads when he decides to make those coin flip plays.
We'll talk about them later in a bit. They are our first game of the day, and I'm also liking just everything that's happening right under the top 2. We have a couple of teams that are vying for that top 3 and could all get it. Something we saw yesterday, though, or someone rather, was Set, aka the boss. He was styling on people in top lane, and yesterday we gave out some tips on how to beat him. But it turns out it is harder than it sounds.
Draft a comp with CC, you're ruining the and run away from him. Huh? You can just walk, actually.
The sidestep, the center ult coming in, Bwimbo in trouble, but that's big damage! That's one! The only way he wins is if he gets the 2v2!
Run away from him.
Ulti already used, Bwimbo wants to finish him down. Knuckle down, 1-2 punch, that's a knockout in the mid lane.
Run away from him.
It's easy. Yeah.
Even when Ender was explaining it and Dracos were explaining it, just walk away, I knew it wasn't possible. You can't just walk away from
This
him.
is the words of a Rek'Sai main, because everyone keeps running away from him. You know, he misses his tunnel, and this is just his complaints manifesting in a different champion.
I mean, I feel like Draco said it best, is that this is the pit master, and eventually you will have to go towards one of those pits, and Set will get to fight you at some point. So welcome to the Thunderdome.
Yeah, welcome indeed. Well, whether you are unranked playing Set, Silver, or Challenger, correct wave management could be the difference between a win or a loss. And Professor Frosk is ready with her class, Riding the Wave.
I see that I upgraded here. Okay, you've been hearing specific language around waves and wave management for a while now, so I'm going to do a TLDR to help you better identify what we're talking about. That way, when you flame North America, you can cite specifics. Now, there are 3 main buckets for all wave management to fall into. There's freezing, crashing, and pushing. Now, let's start with freezing. A freeze is when you manage to hold a minion wave at a specific point in the lane, typically closer to your tower than your opponent's, and usually by keeping the 3 back caster bros alive. This allows you to deny the opponent's CS due to the threat of a possible gank from the jungler. You can also use a freeze to neutralize a missing summoner spell like Flash. If you're flashless, you want to get the golden experience from the minions, but you want to do it from the safety of your own map. Next, a crash, or sometimes referenced to as a slow push, is when you get multiple waves to stack up before they crash on your opponent's tower. This is usually done by thinning your opponent's wave by 1 or 2 minions, which will make your minion wave naturally snowball larger and move closer to the enemy's tower. Now, crashes are important for 2 main reasons. 1, your opponent needs that crash badly. If 3 waves are built up, that's a majority of their gold and experience, so they want to be around for it, especially at early levels. And 2, that also means you get more minion bros to assist you and your jungler in an early dive, and more value to do it, because even if you trade 1 for 1, they'll miss all that golden experience to their tower. But if you want to keep it safe, it also means that you get a big window to back. And finally, there's the push, sometimes referred to as a bounce. Pushing a wave is what most people have experience with when they rock into a lane, they slam their face on the keyboard, and they use all their buttons and constantly auto-attacking to push the minion wave as quickly as possible, shoving the wave into the enemy tower. And there can be good reason to do this. Pushing can give you first rotation towards an objective, giving you crucial time to set up for an incoming play. Now, in case of a bounce, that idea is usually executed in early levels, shoving as quickly as possible to bounce the wave back to your side of the lane. But either way, it's just about using conscious thought, so you're not just autopiloting and shoving free gold into your opponents.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense and is very, very important in our game as it is. Yamato, you as experience as a coach, how much do you practice or train specifically with your players around wave management in games?
I think most of the time I've noticed that mid laners and top laners know it very well because they need to focus on it so well. Usually the bot laners are the ones that need it. Because they are the ones that slam their head into the keyboard and blame the junglers when they get ganked.
I mean, it must be quite difficult because even if, you know, obviously all the pro players know the principles, but there's just so much more going on a map that they probably aren't always paying attention to their waves or the waves of the enemy.
I think the more difficult part is, sure, in the lane matchup is easy to manage, but in conjunction with your mid lane, for example, timing a push and preparing a wave in order to dive, this is the difficult part to kind of figure out in competitive play.
And we actually had a perfect example from that yesterday in the last game of the day with Selfmade from Fnatic. It's when Selfmade didn't have any options to gank. It was the fact that he was top lane. He then sprinted bot lane. And Sjokz are thinking, jungler's top, we can bounce this wave. But they didn't get the bounce in time. And Selfmade was able to get 2 repeat successful ganks, which meant Forgiven didn't get to play the game at all.
Yeah, definitely. So 2 teams that might be very good at wave management because they're still undefeated are G2 and Origen, and they are both the only undefeated teams in the LEC. And later tonight, they take to the stage for our Alienware Match of the Week.
There's no doubt in my mind that this is a matchup between the best and second best team in the league.
I realized after joining Origen, I'm not afraid of G2 anymore. He should be.
Bold statements. Origen looks like the best team.
Job. It has to overstayed as well. Crown shot still laying down a bit of damage. E goes the wrong way. Now with the E to Gank goes. He's still alive. G2 doesn't land on anyone. Look at the dawning shadow. What you're gonna do when they come for you?
I'm pretty sure that everyone who plays against us can never feel safe.
We are chaos. Origen versus G2 is no longer the David versus Goliath matchup that we used to have.
Upset was not touched in that fight. 9K damage. That is so not okay.
I think me and Upset will show him what a true world-class bot lane is.
Dreams, he just walks the entire way with the hook. How did he hit that?
Away by the Cannon Barrage. He stays alive long enough. Alfari in the 1v2.
This is Xerxes, my pick, because he knows that body slam flash. That's gonna be first blood. This is why Xerxes is one of the best junglers in the LEC.
We are going to do great things in 2020. We as G2 are the best team that Euro has ever seen, and if people are not scared of us, then we should remind them.
G2 and Origen are definitely the two best teams in the LEC.
We still have the exact same players. And these are the players that went to the World Final and dominated Europe.
I think this weekend's gonna be a bloodbath.
Whew! I cannot wait for that matchup at the end of the day. Xerxes has promised us a bloodbath, and I hope that we get to see it. Because what's not to be excited about when we have Origen going up against G2 Esports? These two have clashed multiple times, and it is often G2 that come out ahead. So what's the difference? Why am I so excited about this matchup, and what is it about these two teams that stands out for me? Well, today I'm going to run through some clips and show you what excites me so much. Starting off with Origen. This team, they remind me of the katana, the smooth, silky blade that cuts through their opponent with clear precision. Everything they do is planned and calculated. And as we jump into this replay, I want to keep an eye on the minions that they utilize. So, as we start this one off, notice how Afari is pushing in this top wave. You'll notice in the bot lane, Nukeduck is also pushing this wave in. And as we draw attention to the minimap, what we'll see is Origen starting to group up around the dragon. This is Origen saying, we're setting up for this objective. Fnatic, what are you going to do? Fnatic, they look to teamfight. They feel pressured. They don't find anything off the back of it. Oh, but what's happening in the bot side of the map and the top side, you can see that these minion waves have now hit the towers. Origen is creating so much pressure on the minimap right now, and as we roll the play out, we can see that Fnatic is losing this farm. They're losing control over the map. They're losing these resources, while Origen is losing nothing. They're in a prime position to set up for the Drake. They're in a great situation where they can look to fight and keep this dragging on, because it's only going to benefit them more and more. And while, yes, in this clip they do lose the Drake, they win the team fight, and they deny so much farm from their opposition. This is what Origen do so well. Clean, precise, specific. This is something that they have refined and developed coming into the split with the introduction of Xerxes, Upset, and Destiny. But of course, they're going to be going up against Chaos. They're going to be going up against G2, who I think of as the flail, that weapon that just throws around everywhere and it's unpredictable. You never know where it's going to come from. And let's exactly look at a clip and see how this plays out from G2. They were playing against SK last week, and you'll see that SK is setting up for a play towards the top side of the map. They want to try and use the Rift Herald to siege onto mid. We'll notice that G2 is also doing the Infernal Drake, so this trade is happening. Now, from the perspective of SK, they're thinking, hey, we're in a good spot. We've got this top wave pushing in our favor. We've just moved in from the top side. We've got full vision control. The only thing that they don't see is this area of the map below the yellow line. But they still feel confident. They have 5 members. They have the Herald. They should be able to make a play happen. The thing that they can't predict is the unpredictability of G2. How likely is it that 2 people from Infernal would engage from this angle? Who would try and attack a 5-man unit of SK? Well, the one and only G2 Esports, of course. So as we roll the clip out and we watch the play happen, notice how G2 divide up the pressure from SK. SK is split up into 2 sections, the front line here and the back line here. And with Mickey being able to come in from over the wall, with Perks attacking from the right flank, and Yankus coming in from behind, they utilize their Fog of War to find a successful team fight, stopping the siege on the mid tower and turning this game in their favor after losing a couple of early kills. This is how G2 utilize that chaos. This is how they take advantage of the Fog of War and how they create these opportunities that help swing games in their favor. So many exciting things to watch in our match of the week later today, but Jankos, he didn't think so. He had some extra spicy stuff to say in an interview yesterday. Let's see what he said.
I don't really care about Origen. They're nothing special. Like I don't understand where the hype came from. Even like on the hype video, they said that the best 2 teams in Europe. Like, I really don't understand, and I think we are the clear favorites. And I know that Upset and Nukeduck didn't die yet, but they will sure die a lot tomorrow. So it's going to be a fun game.
Jankos, it's hard not to love him, but now it's time for Picks to Squash, where we will discuss the poison and the bait that is ruining LEC drafts. To everyone's surprise, I'm going to start off with Ornn. In solo queue, you love to have him because no matter how hard he falls behind, at some point he's going to build you some juicy items, bring some good engage and some simplicity to the table. The same things low-tier teams love to have. So for the first time ever, Your mediocre solo queue game looks just like an SK game. Nice! He has the lowest win rate of any top lane champion, 24% across the top 4 leagues, which is crazy, and it will only get lower with the addition of Set. You're better off picking Gangplank, Mordekaiser, or even Soraka. Throw some bananas in there. Next one, this one, you guys know exactly why I'm bringing this one up. Next one is Swain. With the small changes to Swain, he's better suited for the super role. Barely even in the super role. His Q doesn't pack the same amount of punch, and his mastery choices are strictly worse. The one that stands out the most is Nimbus Cloak. With the reduced mobility, he just gets kited like a dog. Specifically by the meta. There's Gangplank battles, there's Gragas battles, whatever battles, Swain doesn't like him. I'll keep the last one simple. Misfortune sucks. She's only got 2 wins over 7 picks. Why? Well, Gragas barrels, already mentioned them. Braum shields blocking that ultimate. Nautilus ultimates, once again cancelling her ultimate. And once again, you know, the Leona blind just cancelling her ultimate. So, Vedius, are you vibing with me?
I'm vibing with you, Yamato. I'm feeling it. I want to double up and I want to strut my stuff over to the trash can and put MF in it. I'm feeling it.
Good stuff.
Any follow-ups? Because I honestly am at a loss for words.
I think that he had some great selections, and I think he makes some great points. These champions were expected to be very strong coming into the meta, but we just haven't seen that level of success. And as Yamato said, I love that he's talking about the introduction of Set, these other top lane champions available to you. It does feel to me like they're just having way more impact, considering how easy it is to stop some of these champions in the current meta.
Do you think a lot of the times it's for teams, it's just like, all right, let's fall back to what we know, because otherwise things will become overcomplicated here in week 2?
You know, I've talked a lot about Xayah. There's also a cycle of just pick champions that press R.
Yeah.
Misfortune and, of course, Ornn, they just fit the bill. You know, we need to get some wins on the table. We're 0-4 maybe in the first 2 weeks. Okay, let's pick Ornn, Misfortune. Our comp just
when you
needs to
see
press
the
a button.
Orianas coming out as well, then you know you've reached that.
And you know you're in a you're in a bin, you know. You're done.
Yamato, I'm sure he's not listening, but was that Swain one specifically for Bwipo?
Yeah, for my boy Bwipo. The Conqueror, you know, he was just floating around like this, flashing in, you know, it looked quite disastrous, and you know, it's rough.
I love that. This image is
I love it.
It's Swain, ladies and gentlemen, it's Swain.
It's great also. Yamato just laying down the law, and we'll see if teams take his advice with 5 more games worth of action left. Later tonight, Selfmade looks to continue his great performance from yesterday as he goes up against his former team in SK. I mean, it's a good one for the storyline of Selfmade, but oof, it's going to be a rough one for SK.
Yeah, I'm expecting Fnatic to just smash this matchup, honestly. Right now, we see SK, Vitality, and Misfits sitting at the bottom of the table. And while Misfits did pick up a big win, I'm still looking at these 3 teams as kind of at the early parts of the split being easy pickings for many teams.
Yeah, still a couple of teams chasing their first win even, so maybe they get that on the board today. First up, however, today is XL Esports versus Misfits. After finishing last in summer 2019, the UK underdogs have started the new year with a bang. Let's check in with Laure at the Smoothie Bar for more insight. Smoothies.
Thank you very much, Sjokz. Welcome to the Live Like a Pro interview. We are back this week with Fabian from XL. Thank you very much for joining me. I have so much to ask you because yesterday I talked to Youngbuck about how XL was doing amazingly since the beginning of the split, and I know you recently joined the team as head of performance. Can you explain what it's about?
So, yeah, hi, nice to meet you. Head of performance is basically focusing obviously on the in-game performance, making sure they're performing on the best level, but obviously also looking on dimensions outside of the game, well-being, sport psychology, how to prepare, and what do we do when we're not spending time in front of the computer. So we focus on well-being that will lead to better performance, basically.
Can you tell me a bit more about this second part? Because, I mean, we know how the in-game training can work with the coaches and everything, but when it comes to performance and how to increase it, especially on the psychological aspect, we don't know much about that. So how do you train these players to be ready for the game?
That's a really good question, because the most teams just focus on practice, whereas practice is one part of the day, but there are so many components like sleep, nutrition. We have many pillars we are focusing on. Physical activity, because they need good concentration, so better concentration over time, healthy mindset, and then in the end, the mentality. We have to have confidence, self-esteem, and also making sure that the player develop as human beings, so that's everyone focusing just on gaming but never anyone focus on live. So we want to make sure that we develop them, that they are, when they're here, to be ready on stage and create peak performance.
I think it's interesting and it can be struggling for you sometimes because knowing how esports players can be, teaching them good habits may be difficult in the beginning, like giving them a routine, something like that. So how did they react when you showed up?
Yeah, that's completely true. I'm coming from traditional sports, so they become professional players themselves by just playing, and then someone comes there, has no clue about esports, and they're like, why the hell should I change something right now? Because I'm already good with what I'm doing. So normally they are really negative towards you. You are lucky as a performance coach if they are neutral, but over the time they will understand, and by showing and leading by example, they will see the benefits, as we can already see in Excel, having 3 games and 2 wins.
And we see how it goes. I mean, they showed so much progress lately. And as you mentioned, you used to work in sports. I see here that you have a degree in psychology in sports and exercise. You used to work with football teams. So how is it different working with football teams and esports players?
I mean, there are different needs. The football players, they are way more physical, so they do physical activities, they focus on their sleep, whereas there is not the awareness in esports yet that they are nothing else than a traditional pro athlete. So we just have to transition what makes sense from traditional sports and esports, what doesn't make sense, and what makes exactly sense in esports. So it's actually really similar, if you would ask me.
Can you give me some examples then from things you brought from sports to esports at Excel?
I mean, in general, if you work with a person, they're always the same human needs. So when you're a caster and you have bad sleep, you are not in a good mood. That's the same with a professional player. Food is really important. Physical activity is important. Fresh air. So all the human needs anyone actually could benefit from. So it's not rocket science. The rocket science or the difficult thing is, like you said, having quite rebels. They don't want to change and almost get a cultural shock because someone like me coming in, how do you address it? Because I know what's good for them, but everyone is different. So how do you approach them? That is the most important thing about my job.
And getting to know them, I think. So focusing on today, they have an important game. They've been doing so well lately, but I mean, each game matters. So how do you make sure they are ready on game day?
So basically, when we get the shuttle 2 hours before the game, everything is planned. Before they get a vitamin water, a smoothie, we make sure they have the right nutrition and snacks here. Then today we don't have a game ahead, but normally we look at the draft 10 minutes after, we turn off the television and start with our routines. Breathing techniques, getting outside, opening up the body, getting the brain active, do some pep talk and making sure we focus on our strengths and our game plan and not focus too much on the other team, and then they're ready to roll.
That's really impressive, and thank you so much for all these insights. Good luck for the game today. Back to you, Sjokz.
Thank you so much. That was incredibly interesting, I have to say. And there's a reason that Fabian has worked with several top football teams, as well as a lot of the teams in the LEC, including Origen, including Schalke 04. And listening to him, it just all makes so much sense. And you really need someone to take control of it, because these young players, how would they ever find it out on themselves? They just want to practice and play and win. But there's so much more that contributes to that than just showing up on the day.
Yeah, I feel like Excel seem to have they seem to be ticking all the boxes, right? Like when we think about where Excel were last year and where they are now, like we can see the introduction of Youngbuck to this roster. And you have to imagine his experience tied along with the fact that you have the support staff focusing on the health and maintenance of these players, the consistent improvement done in a healthy way. You can see how they had the building blocks last year that seem to be all coming together this year.
And that's why this does feel like a redemption split for Excel so far. Today, they're up versus another team with a lot to prove, Misfits. So we wanted to look at the roads, I think, behind and ahead of both teams. And Excel is such a great example. They have 2 wins out of the 3 games they've played so far, are looking in a good position to go undefeated for the first time in their LEC career in a week. Yamato, what has been working so well for these guys?
I think honestly the biggest strength that Excel has showcased so far is their early game. Even in the game they lost against Rogue, they were very, very far ahead and they failed to close. Very similar to the position they reached at the end of last year. I think with the idea that they've reached this point already so early in the split, I think the mid to late game issues that they've showcased are very easy to address. And I think this week has been the start of that. Yesterday, they had the Pantheon once again, strong early game, and they just brute forced the entirety of the mid and late game.
Yeah.
And this is why I said that I think this roster could be challenging for the top 3 spots towards the end of the split. I think that they have all these building blocks that they need in order to be able to contest some of the top teams. It's all about how the growth process goes for this roster.
If you look at them and you compare them to kind of the other top teams, what is their method? Do they feel more OG to you, more in terms of planning and precision? Do they feel more like Fnatic or G2? Are they a bit all over the place? Or how would you describe the mythology of an XL?
I feel like when it comes to XL, the vibe I'm getting from each individual player, reading their interviews, how they speak about each other, I think the atmosphere is fantastic. Also, the vibe I'm getting from Youngbuck and from talking to him, how he contributes to a culture. I think everyone's there to improve a product. I don't think they have any personality issues. I think all of them have the same goal. And I think with this in mind, I think there's always going to be steady growth. You have some players with a lot of history, but they've never been in a situation when they're surrounded by players with equal goals and equal kind of predispositions in terms of what they can accomplish. So I'm very excited for this roster. I agree with this being like one of those disciplined rosters that can take away games from a team like, for example, G2 if they slip up an early game in the end of the season.
Fantastic trajectory ahead for XL. Of course, they have to win those games, even though we talk them up, including this specific game versus Misfits. Now, Misfits for the last few years, it's been so rough for them, we have to say, for a brand that came into the scene and was very successful in their first kind of forays into, that's not a word, for their first kind of moves into the league, but they have been struggling. Now, we have a new dawn. We have a couple of new players. We have a couple of new influxes behind the scenes as well. But until yesterday, it didn't really materialize. What are we seeing in their next couple of weeks?
I mean, the bright side is Fabian looked good yesterday. Like, he is one of the players that I think many fans have wanted to see in the roster and succeeding for a while. And I think that yesterday was the best example of him working well with his jungler and being set up for success. So it's definitely a good start. But there's still a lot that needs to be shown to me in order to convince me that Misfits is still in a position to be challenging further up in the rankings.
Something that stood out to me in the first week specifically was that Razor EQ on Jarvan when he just missed the flag, and that just got me worried for the future of this man, especially as a rookie. But he picked up the best jungler in the game, Gragas, and then he delivered. He stole the Nash. It remained stone cold, and this is what I love to see from a rookie. I think Razor all of a sudden is now on my radar. From first week, he wasn't, so I'm happy for him.
And what I think we've wanted to see for a while now is kind of a return to the Misfits of old. For a long time, Misfits was a fan favorite because of what they were doing in the league, how they were approaching the game. And over the last 2 years, it's kind of just been a slow and steady decline for this organization. And with fresh faces, with a lot of hopeful talent, I think we're optimistic, but we're still looking for that key, that spark, that big win in order to convince us that they've kind of returned to that.
Yeah, and that's how I kind of want to come full circle to this game, because I think it's good that we hype up their first win yesterday, but it was versus a team that is also struggling, SK Gaming, and it is a win versus a team like XL that could really put them on the map. A little bit unfortunate for them. XL and Misfits, of course, played a bit earlier in the pre-season tournament, and Misfits didn't win there, but this is different. This is a best of one. These are some different players, and maybe they can make it happen. We'll see. I don't think you guys will bet on them for this one specifically. So we'll leave it at that. It is up to Misfits to prove us wrong, and it's time for more action in the LEC Spring Split. So let's head over to our casters for Game 1.
Thank you, Sjokz. I'm Dracos. This is Froskurinn. We're going to be bringing you the first 2 games of the day, and we're starting off with a very exciting game. There's a lot of history here. There's not a lot of history here. I'm wondering exactly what I can say about this game to build as much hype as possible.
Rematch of the Neo Surf Cup.
Rematch of the Neo Surf Cup. That's what we're about to witness, folks. If you didn't watch the Neo Surf Cup, it was an excellent preview of kind of things to come